Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 3, Attitudes and Job Satisfaction. We're going to talk about the different types of attitudes that we study. We're going to talk about job satisfaction. We're going to talk about why these are important outcomes that we care about, and the different ways that we kind of can measure these things. So we're going to start out talking about what an attitude is. So an attitude is an evaluative statement, either for or against something, about objects, people, or events. They reflect how we feel about something. So let's talk about the three components, and I think that will give you a better idea about what attitudes are. So there are three components to an attitude. On the exam, you will need to know what an attitude is and the three components. The first is this cognitive evaluation. So it's how you think about something. So this might be characterized by something like, my supervisor gave a promotion to a coworker who deserved it less than me. My supervisor is unfair. So this is how you think about something. This is you evaluating it. It's looking at the circumstances, the facts. It's all about sort of thinking about what happened. The second part of it is affective, and anytime I say affective, and you'll hear this again when we talk about moods and feelings and emotions, it means feeling. So this is sort of your feeling part of your evaluation. So, my boss gave a promotion to somebody else and they didn't deserve it. That's how I think about it. But how do I feel about it? Well, I kind of hate my supervisor. Like I don't like him or her very much right at this moment. And then the third part is your behavior, which is what you're going to do about it. So your boss gave a job to somebody who didn't deserve it. You feel pretty cranky about it. Makes you feel not so good towards your supervisor. And how you're going to do it is you're going to look for other work, right? You're going to go to your desk. You're going to go log on to Monster. You're going to look for job postings. You're going to call your friends, ask them if they have openings at their places of employment. So this is all about what you're going to do based on your thoughts and feelings about the situation. We find that attitudes that people hold determine what they do is kind of the early research on this. So forever we thought, well, attitudes are important because they tell us what people are going to do, right? So if you hate horror movies, you think that they're too gratuitous, they make you feel sort of nervous, and therefore you're not going to go see them. Well, that tells me what you're going to do, right? You're not going to go see horror movies. But then this guy in the 1960s, I believe it was, Leon Festinger, said that, well, maybe that's not the order that happens in. Maybe it's sometimes what people do, they have to justify it, and that determines their attitudes. So I want you to watch this link about research behind cognitive dissonance. It is not the sexiest link I'm going to give you. It's pretty old, but it talks about how people do something and then they have to justify it. And we find that if that doesn't happen, you are in a state of what we call cognitive dissonance. So this is when you behave in a way that is incompatible with how you feel about something, right? So let's say you think cheating is wrong. You think nobody should cheat, cheating is bad, but you find yourself in a place where you have to get a good grade on a test, and you didn't study ahead of time, and things happened, and you find yourself in a place where you decide you're going to cheat on the test. So after you've cheated, you've got this situation where your thoughts, your attitude about it is, this is wrong, but your behavior is such that you did something that you personally don't feel is how people should act. This is not a very good place cognitively to be. People don't enjoy being in a state of cognitive dissonance. So what they do is they make sure that these things are in alignment. So you have a couple choices. You could say, well, cheating is bad, but it just happened that one time. So it doesn't count. That was my one. That was my freebie. I'm never going to do it again. Cheating is bad. I'm not going to do it. Or you could change your attitude such that cheating's not that bad. Everybody cheats. That's just how the world works. I cheated. Everybody cheats. It's fine. Cheating's not bad. So now your attitude about cheating reflects your behavior. It's If you've ever heard the story of sour grapes, which is an Aesop fable, it's about a fox, I believe, who was trying to get these grapes out of the tree. And they looked juicy and beautiful and delicious, and he really wanted it. And he tried everything, right? He tried climbing. He tried to get other animals to help him. And then it just got to the point where he figured out that even though he really wanted these grapes, he was never going to get them. So basically what he said was, well, I don't want them anyway. They're probably sour. So if you've ever liked somebody in a romantic way, and then they turn you down, your response might be, well, they weren't that great. So anyway, they weren't all that in a bag of chips anyway. I don't need them. There's a lot of fish in the sea. You are in a stage of cognitive dissonance. You want something, you value something, and that thing turns you down. So, one way to get over that is to think that that thing wasn't that great in the first place. We want to be in a place of consistency. We like to have things match up and be in alignment. So again, anytime you're in a stage of cognitive dissonance, it doesn't feel good. You are motivated psychologically to find some sort of harmony between how you think and what you do. So we're going to talk about some major job attitudes that we care about. Job satisfaction is pretty big. We care about productivity. We care about that a lot. But if we're going to talk about attitudes, job satisfaction is the one that we've studied the most. So this is, do you like your job? Do you get some sort of, satisfaction from your job? Do you show up and do you hate everything that you do in your job? You don't like it. You don't like your boss. You don't like your coworkers. You don't think there's any, chance for advancement. You hate what you're getting paid. If somebody's dissatisfied, those are the things that they might be dissatisfied about. And we'll talk about that more here in a couple slides. The second is job involvement. So this is the degree of psychological identification with a job, where perceived performance is important to self-worth. So how much, if I ask you the first question, tell me something about yourself, and you're like, oh, I'm an engineering student, or oh, I'm a management student, or oh, I'm an accounting student. You have a lot of psychological identification with your major, with the job that you want to do. The more that you're involved with that, the more it's tied up into your sense of self-worth, right? If who you are as an engineer, who you are as a nurse, if who you are as a judge, then if you don't do that job very well, that's pretty damaging to your sense of self. So the more job involvement you have, we find that the more you try to strive at your job. So those things are in alignment, just like what we were talking about with cognitive dissonance. Psychological empowerment is the belief that you can influence your job, make it have more meaningfulness, have autonomy, so the ability to do your job as you see fit. If you found something wrong in your job and you said, okay, well, if we fix this, it would be much better, and you brought it to your boss and they were like, oh, that's a really good idea. What kind of resources do you need? How can I help you make these changes? You would feel a lot of, psychological empowerment in your job. You feel like you could fix things, that you could bring up inefficiencies, that you could make a change. If you've ever worked someplace though where you had this great idea, how to change something, what should be improved, and you took it to your superiors and they basically told you to sit down and shut up, you would not feel that you worked somewhere where you were particularly psychologically empowered. Organizational commitment is something that we care about quite a bit. So this is, how committed to your organization are you? How likely are you going to stay? We find that there are 3 components to commitment. So the first is affective commitment. Do you like your job? Do you have a lot of loyalty to your job because you like it there? You feel like they treat you well. You feel like you like what you do, and you just would feel bad for leaving because you like the place that you're employed at. If you have affective commitment, and that's the kind of commitment we want to instill in employees, that's a very powerful thing to have. The second is normative commitment, and this is just you would feel bad if you left because you feel like you would leave them in the lurch. Like you do a particular thing, and if that you left, you would leave them in the lurch, and you could kind of feel bad about that. That is something that is not. We don't really want to instill that in people, right? We would rather have people work somewhere because they like it, not because they would feel bad for leaving it for it. The third is continuous commitment, which we sometimes call the golden handcuffs. So that's when you don't leave an organization because it would be too expensive to do so. So you can't leave your organization because you would lose your pension. You can't leave your organization because you would lose your medical insurance. You can't leave your organization because, you have 6 weeks of vacation. And if you started out in a new company, you'd only get 2. Again, this is not so much the kind of commitment that we're striving to instill in our employees, but it does keep people working in organizations. We do feel, through theoretical models, we do feel that employees who are committed will be less likely to engage in work withdrawal, even if they're satisfied, because they have a sense of organizational loyalty. And a lot of that is coming from that affective commitment, right? You're not going to lash out at your company because you feel like overall they're a good company to work for. Perceived organizational support, or POS, was actually proposed by a guy named Eisenberger. I know that because he was a professor in my grad school, so pretty familiar with this theory. This is the idea that you could work someplace where you feel that an organization values your contribution and you care about their well-being. So when I was an undergrad, I went to San Diego State University, and they had a professor there who had some sort of rare brain tumor cancer. And she needed like a procedure, a surgery that was not covered by insurance because it was very specialized. It was kind of a new procedure, so her insurance wouldn't cover it all. So San Diego State held fundraisers. They really tried to get money for her. They gave her all the time off that she needed to have this procedure, to recuperate afterwards. And you have to imagine that she felt pretty grateful to her organization. She felt like her organization cared about her as a person, as opposed to like a cog in the machine that is the machine of productivity production. We do find that POS is higher when rewards are fair, when employees are involved in decision making, and supervisors are seen as supportive. So if you want to create an environment that people are going to see as supportive, those are things that you can do. And we do find that when you have this organizational support, it is related to things like organizational citizenship behaviors, which are those non-task related things that I talked about in the first lecture. So helping out others, serving on committees, things that are not formally in your job description, but make the organization work more efficiently. And that, again, makes more sense. If your company is supportive of you, why would you not throw in extra effort to help out the organization? And we do find, and again, this is the holy grail, that we find performance is higher too. And again, it gets into that norm of reciprocity. If you give me something, or if I feel you will give me something if I need it, then I'm more likely to give something back. Employee engagement is a pretty hot topic. It's especially big in Europe. So if you're ever going to work in Europe, this is something that you should probably be familiar with. Also, for a long time, consulting companies or in-house HR, employee advancement, human talent management departments were doing surveys on job satisfaction because we cared about that. That really has been replaced by looking at people's employee engagement. So this is your involvement with, your satisfaction with, and your enthusiasm for the job. We find that people are highly engaged, they're passionate about their work, they're passionate about their company. These are the people that go the extra mile, get really immersed in their work, like problems because it gives them a chance to solve them for the organization. And they're just, really ensconced in their work. That's a very different employee than somebody who just shows up 8 to 5, punches their time clock, does what they need to do, but doesn't look for ways to go above and beyond. They're not really particularly, passionate about their job. They're just sort of ticking the box so that they can go home. These are two different employees. And if I'm a manager, I want people who are engaged. So you might ask the question, are the job attitudes that we talked about really all that distinct? Is being engaged super different from being satisfied? Is that super different than feeling like there's organizational support? Is that super different from being committed to your organization? And the answer is no, they're pretty correlated. They have a lot of things that they share in common. But if you do the math, and there is a lot of math behind this, the math tells you that they are distinct constructs. So they predict things differently. So that makes them valuable to study in and of themselves. But when you talk about them in tandem as a group, you can see that there is overlap. So, it is a case that can cause confusion, even in organizations. To simplify it, some recent research has just sort of identified people as being enthusiastic stayers, reluctant stayers, enthusiastic leavers, or reluctant leavers. So enthusiastic stayers, that might, again, be high commitment, high engagement. These are people who are very, committed to their job. They love it. They have no plans to leave. You might have reluctant stayers, so people who are going to stay because they don't have a choice. There's no other option. They're in a small town and they can't leave due to their spouse or their kids, or they might just the job market might just be tight and they just don't have a lot of opportunities. So yes, they're staying there, but when times become better or when situations change, they might leave. You have enthusiastic leavers. These are people who flip the table, drop the mic. They, take this job and shove it. They are super happy to leave the organization. And then you have reluctant leavers. So people who wouldn't leave normally, but are moving or just got an offer that was so much better that they really can't afford to stay at the job that they have now. So this is, again, these are things we care about. Do people want to stay? Do they want to leave? And if I can classify people in these individual categories, I can address them in different ways, which is the whole purpose of organizational behavior, right? Why do we care about categorizing people? Well, because I'm going to approach reluctant stayers different than I am going to approach, enthusiastic leavers. It's going to be a different approach. They might be different topics that I need to address to change the attitudes of these people that belong in these different categories. So job satisfaction, again, still something we care about a lot. We do find that there do seem to be certain jobs that just don't generate a lot of job satisfaction. So this is a little bit outdated, but these are the worst jobs of 2013, which are newspaper reporter, lumberjack, enlisted military, actor, oil rig worker, dairy farmer, meter reader, mail carrier, roofer, and flight attendant. So I'm going to ask you to look at how much they make and see if you can find any patterns. And what you might notice is a lot of these jobs are under $40,000 a year. So that sort of begs the question, do you think money is related to job satisfaction? Do you think that I could simply increase your job satisfaction if I paid you more at work? So what is job satisfaction? It's just positive feelings about a job resulting from the evaluation of its characteristics. That's a very kind of broad definition. It's really, do you like your job? And there's two ways that we can measure this. So there is the single global rating, which is just one question, which is basically, do you like your job? On a scale of 1 to 5, do you like your job? And then if I wanted more information, I could ask you about different facets of your job. So do you like your coworkers? Do you like your boss? Do you like how much you get paid? Do you like the kind of resources that you are provided? This actually gives us a little bit more detailed information about your job and what you like and what you don't like. So I do like that survey better because it gives me a little bit more information. But we actually find that these two scales predict job satisfaction at almost the exact same rate, which is really weird because normally you never have a one-item scale. Usually one-item scale is a terrible idea. For whatever reason, it works with job satisfaction. So how satisfied are people in their jobs? We find that over the last 30 years, employees in the U.S. and most developed countries have generally been satisfied with their jobs. We do find that in economic downturns, that workers are less satisfied. And that might be because they have to do more with less. So a lot of times in these economic downturns, it's like, okay, well, we're laying off half our workforces and you are left, yay you, but now you have to do the job of 2, 3, 4, 5, a whole entire department. And when you're overworked and underpaid for that work, that's not necessarily going to lead you in a situation where you're particularly satisfied. We do find that satisfaction levels differ depending on the facet involved, and we'll look at the facets here in a second. And we do tend to find that employees in Western cultures have higher levels of job satisfaction as compared to employees in Eastern cultures. I do want you to do an activity now. So in your additional resources folder, you will find a job satisfaction survey. So I want you to take the survey. It will then tell you how to score it and what those scores mean. So I want you to take it. I want you to score it so that you can answer these questions. So what areas of your job are you most satisfied with? What areas of your job are you least satisfied with? What is your organization doing right? In other words, what are they specifically doing that's causing these higher levels of job satisfaction? If you have high job satisfaction, or at least you have high job satisfaction in some of the facets, what are they doing to cause that? And the flip side of that is if you have low job satisfaction, or if you have low job satisfaction in some of these facets, what is your organization doing wrong? I should say doing wrong, not going wrong, sorry. And what can they do to fix it? If they're doing something wrong, what could change your attitude on this? Which is the last question. How can they fix things that they are doing wrong? So I want, again, sort of standard page and a half, double spaced. If you would upload that for Blackboard, that will be your activity for points for Chapter 3. So hopefully you took the time to do that activity, and this will tell you kind of average job satisfaction levels by facet. And you'll notice that people actually kind of like the work itself that they're doing. People are generally not dissatisfied with the kind of tasks that they have to do in their job. We generally tend to find that overall people are pretty happy with their job. They're pretty satisfied. Satisfied with their coworkers, their supervision. Where we tend to find the most dissatisfaction with is pay, and particularly promotion, which tells us that we're not doing a good job with succession planning. We're not doing a good job, helping people get promoted in their careers, have a clear path of where they're going to be in 5-10 years. We just don't do a lot of planning, and we're really bad about that overall component of really human resource management. If we look at the average level employees' job satisfaction by country, we can see that Mexico, it reports the sort of highest level of employee satisfaction, followed by Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, and the United States. If we look at the sort of opposite end, we find that Russia, Australia, Czech Republic, France, and South Korea report some of the lowest job satisfactions by country. Excuse me. We don't really know why that is. But here's the glorious thing about research is if you were interested in this, we could design some kind of study that would give us some sort of insight on why the numbers tend to play out the way they do. So we're going to summarize kind of the main things about job satisfaction. So what causes job satisfaction? We do find that job satisfaction is correlated with life satisfaction. So if you're just a general positive person, you like your work, you like your job, you like your life, those things seem to kind of go hand in hand, which makes a lot of sense because we have what we call work-family interference. Or family to work interference. So if you hate your life, a lot of times that bleeds over into your job. And if you hate your job, a lot of times that bleeds over into your life. We do find that pay only influences job satisfaction only to a point, and the magical number seems to be $40,000 or $80,000 if you're a dual earner couple. So after that, money might be nice, but it doesn't seem to influence job satisfaction numbers. If you make under 40 or under 80 as a household, then money seems to make a big difference. Can make actually those job satisfaction numbers go quite up significantly as you raise how much somebody's getting paid. We also find that personality plays a role in job satisfaction. So people who have high positive core self-evaluations, which is funny because one of the authors on your book is Mike Judge, I believe is his first name. This is his thing that he's famous for, so I'm not surprised it shows up in your book. But people who believe in their inner self-worth and their basic competence are more satisfied with their jobs than people who have lower self-esteem, have lower sort of self-worth, lower feelings of being able to accomplish things. If you doubt yourself, then oftentimes your job satisfaction numbers are not super high. So what does the research say about job satisfaction? Why do we care about this? How does it link to outcomes that we think are important and we want to pay attention to? So the first is job satisfaction and job performance. We generally tend to find that happy workers are more likely to be productive workers. Now, that being said, there are a lot of moderating factors that go into that. So it's not just happy workers or productive workers. It might be happy workers who also have a certain personality, or happy workers that have, resources in the workplace. So there's a lot of things that go into this recipe that are not captured just by that statement. Job satisfaction and organizational citizenship behaviors. So if you are more satisfied with your job, you are more likely to pitch in extra kinds of stuff that are not formally required in your job. Job satisfaction and customer satisfaction. We do generally tend to find that satisfied employees increase customer satisfaction and loyalty. And think about this. If you go into a place of business, you can pretty easily tell if somebody hates their job. I've had customer service and I'm just like, man, you hate your job. And because they hate their job, they're not giving me very good customer service. I can tell that they're in a bad mood. So having happy people, that seems to pan out. And we'll talk about things like emotional contagion in next lecture. Job satisfaction and absenteeism. We actually find that there's a consistent negative relationship between satisfaction and absenteeism. When I use the words positive and negative, when I talk about correlations, I'm not talking about good and bad. Positive just means as one thing goes up, the other thing goes up. Negative just means that when one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. So here it's a negative relationship because the higher your level of job satisfaction, the lower level of your absenteeism. We do tend to find that this relationship is moderate to weak. So there does seem to be other things playing into why people would not show up for work just other than job satisfaction. So it's the job of research to figure out what are those other ingredients. Job satisfaction turnover. We find that there is lower job satisfaction as a predictor of a potential, intention to leave. So the more you dislike your job, the more likely you are to leave it. That makes a certain amount of sense. Job satisfaction and workplace deviance. Generally, if people don't like their job, they're not satisfied with their job, they tend to lash out, whether that's, stealing or sabotage or just going and sitting at your desk and playing Angry Birds all day. That all falls under workplace deviance. So especially if you can't leave your job, like you're stuck there, but you hate it, those feelings tend to find some way out of you, right? And a lot of times it tends to lash out in these kind of forms of workplace deviance. We sometimes also find that managers just don't get it. So they don't understand why job satisfaction is important. They don't feel like having happy employees is something that they should care about or that makes a difference, right? So it's not my job as a manager to, make sure that you're a happy, shiny person. My job as a manager is to make sure you get your job done. The problem with that perspective, though, is that we do find that job satisfaction is linked to all sorts of important things we care about, including production. Also, some managers, even if they do value job satisfaction, they are actually likely to overestimate how satisfied their employers are. So they don't think there's a problem. They don't think there's anything that needs to be done. So it's not that they don't, I don't care if my employees are, dissatisfied and they go cry themselves to sleep at their desk every day. Like, it's just like, okay, yeah, I want my workers to be happy, but they're clearly happy. They're fine. So nothing needs to be done. When a lot of times there are at least some facets that people are consistently dissatisfied with, and something could probably be done to increase, make those more efficient, effective, worthwhile, so people's satisfaction is increased.